how they would break that down. So as we move along, the PDF, there will be a PDF called Fact versus Value. I actually wrote that for an ethics class. It's a few years old, that PDF. I need to update it more because I see a few small grammatical errors, nothing too large, and I might change the format of it. But essentially that's available, and that gives you a little bit of a difference between what is a fact versus a value. The fact that values are essentially opinions, and we'd like to boil everything down to facts because facts become very important in logic. Logic, if we can get everything down to the facts, we're actually more capable of evaluating an argument, and we're more capable of reaching consensus. Why? Because in the end, facts are, facts are not, they're not really arguable. I mean, it's, the so-and-so is 6 feet tall. We can measure that and know, is that true or not? Things like the door is red. We can look at the door, and if it's red, then we've got the answer to that question. A cow is a female bovine that has had a calf. Okay, that's part of the definition. And so if we can get to those things, we don't have we don't have any debate really. It's when you get into things like cows are hideous animals, or Bill is tall, or things like that, that we get into opinion, and then people begin to debate, because Bill being tall may be somewhat a factor of who you're asking. I mean, Bill being 6 feet tall may not be that tall for some people. For example, I'm 6 feet tall, and my brothers-in-law, all of them are about, I think the shortest of them is maybe like 6 foot, 6'1", and then they go up to like 6'4", 6'5". And so to a certain degree, when I'm with them, I feel like I'm short. But when I'm with other people, I feel kind of tall. I mean, it just sort of depends. And so the case is that, saying somebody is tall is not the best statement. Saying the person is 6 feet in height is probably the best statement. And so one of the things we do is we try to break everything down into facts, because we can evaluate them more simply. I will give you right here, right now, the best way to win every argument is never attack the person's conclusion. Always attack their, what we call, premises. Premises are the statements one uses to support their conclusion. And the conclusion is things like, if you're arguing with somebody over, I gave as an example, I believe in the previous chapter, about, for example, I gave an example of, maybe you're arguing over, should we get a new dishwasher? And then one person's saying, we should, the old, it costs too much, I gave you all these reasons. Well, one of the things to think about with that is, as far as facts go, is that if you sit there and argue, and you just simply argue saying, we shouldn't get a new dishwasher, and the other person's arguing for we should get a dishwasher, or suppose you're having an argument with your friends like, let's go out to this place, or let's go to that place, or let's go over to this friend's house, let's not go to that friend's house, I don't want to go to that party. If you simply argue for your conclusion, you probably won't make as much traction as if you said, well, why should we go to the party? And the person gives you their reasons, and then you say, yes, but that reason's bad. And the reason that reason is bad is because you're saying we're friends with that person, and we're really not. Or it'll be fun, and you know what? We've been to that party before, and it's not fun. That instead of arguing for or against it, is to take all the points and reasons they're giving you for the conclusion they want, and then to try to undermine them. So that is what basically the factual statements is. We boil it down, and we do that because we can evaluate our facts more easily. If we say so-and-so is 6 feet tall, we can evaluate that more easily than saying Bill is tall, or so-and-so is tall. Now, the other thing we can do is by breaking down our statements into fact and value claims, we can figure out which ones are value claims. And we can then say, well, let's not look at that, because that's a value claim, it's not a factual claim. Now, the key, and what I really wanted to talk about in this lecture, and so this will be sort of the main point here, because that was really kind of talking a little bit about fact versus value. But the thing that I want to talk about right here is the idea that in every logical argument there are two parts. There are two parts that exist in every logical argument. There are two claims that are made. There are certain things that, if you can have statements and they aren't necessarily an argument. But in order to have an argument, you need to have statements used to support a conclusion. And those statements are used to support a conclusion are always making two claims. The first claim is what we call a factual claim. A factual claim is the idea that they're saying that they're making statements that are true. And that's what that whole fact versus value lecture is about, is evaluating the factual claim. Are they actually making true statements? Okay? Because the case is that if you're trying to prove a point and you're using false information, then your argument is aired. But if you're making factual statements and your statements are true, then that's okay. Now, the other side of what we do is we have what we call a inferential claim. Inferential claim. That's I-N-F-E-R-E-N-T-I-A-L. Inferential. And there's a thing called an inferential claim. And the inferential claim is the idea that the statements I make infer or prove what I'm trying to conclude. And every argument makes both a factual claim that what they're saying is true, and an inferential claim saying that the statements I use work together to prove what I want to prove. Now, what we'll learn as we move along in the next module is there's a difference for inferential claims between deductive and inductive, and then we can realize that there's valid, invalid, strong, weak, etc. But the key here is that every argument is making two claims. It's making a claim that the statements work together to prove what they want to prove, and that the claims they're making are true, that they are factual. And the inferential claim is what we'll spend a lot of time evaluating in logic. We'll use Venn diagrams, we'll use categorical logic, we'll learn forms, we'll try counterintuitive methods, we'll do truth functional logic, we'll do deductive, straight inductive logic, we'll study inductive logic. All these things are essentially ways of evaluating the inferential claim. The idea that if I say all x are y and all y are z, then I can say all x are z. And so that would be an argument that actually infers something and follows a certain method that actually proves what we want. And so every argument needs to be able to have an inferential claim and a factual claim. Which brings us to one final point on this, and that is that an argument can have a really great inferential claim, and it can be something like all dogs are cats, and all cats are zebras, and therefore all dogs are zebras. That would be a claim that inferentially it works, that if all dogs are cats and all cats are zebras, then all dogs would be zebras. But it fails on the factual side. It isn't true. But we could also take something that, like, for example, where every statement's true, like all wines are alcoholic beverages, all Merlots are alcoholic beverages, therefore all Merlots are wines. Every statement, even the conclusion in that, is factual, but the statements don't work together. Why? Because all wines are alcoholic and all Merlots are alcoholic doesn't really relate. It's like saying all beers are alcoholic beverages. That doesn't make all beers wines. It doesn't make, that those two things don't work together. Just because they're part of the same larger class doesn't mean they are the same thing. And so what we have here is we need to be aware that the inference is also important, the fact that it works together. And so we have both what we call an inferential claim and what we call a factual claim. And in order to have an argument, you need both. Now, as a final point on this, you can have things that may appear that are factual, that are just statements of fact, and you can have things that are maybe somewhat inferential, but really to be an argument you need that inferential claim. that a bunch of statements of facts are not an argument, that explanations are not arguments, and that not everything is an argument. That, you really need those two things to be occurring. You need them to be trying to work from premises to prove their conclusion with both inferential and factual claims.